Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I am in a tree, and you are sitting in the northeast corner of wonderful South Africa watching Safari Live. Standing by.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Yes, still in the tree, everyone. Welcome again. It is a marvellous day here in the Lowveld, and on account of the fact that Brian and I found only some elephants and not much else this morning, I thought I would try and gain some height in order to find whatever it is this wilderness might be hiding for us. You are most welcome. We are on a live safari for the next 3 hours. We are called Safari Live, in case you are wondering who we are. My name is James Henry. On camera today is Brian Joubert. And Brian, you have an interesting thumb this afternoon, don't you? What is it? Have a look at this, everybody. And it apparently is a suave starfish. Of course, they are not found often around here. The echinoderms normally found in marine environments. But of course, because we are an all-round nature show, we thought we'd have a suave starfish for you today. Please do talk to us during the course of the afternoon. Hashtag Safari Live if you're on Twitter. You can tweet anything you like. Well, as long as it's not too rude. And questions at WildEarthTV if you're on the email. You can be much ruder on that, of course, because no one will see it, other than the ladies in the final control. Which brings me to the ladies in the final control. We have Kirsten McLennan-Smith, who is directing this afternoon, and I think it is Rebecca helping her out on the second director's chair. Stefan Winterboer, the mystic boer, out on walk later on, and he will also be, well, also driving around, heading hopefully towards those magnificent Nkuhuma Cubs, Brent Leo Smith being filmed by the diminutive and Paul Kruger-like figure of Willem Doornbraak. I am now going to exit this tree. I have not seen anything that I wish to show you up here, and I hope that you will shut your eyes should the eventuality of my plummeting down occur. Brian, will you shut your eyes? And you must also administer first aid. No, we'll have to open them once the screaming begins. There we are. It's quite a nice tree, everybody. It's called a weeping wattle. And it seems I've been coming across many trees at the moment that are supposed to be good for eye troubles. If you have eye troubles, i.e. dust has got into your eyes, or perhaps the brightness of the sun has rendered your eyes red and sore, well, then you shake, or you don't shake these, you shake these into water, you soak them for a little while, and then you put the cold decoction in your eyes, and that will soothe them until they are perfectly white around whatever colour it is you have in the middle. Right, there it is. We came down this route because we were hoping Tingana, the male leopard, would be around here. He was in Simbambili, basically over there this morning, but he seems not to have popped across this far. So we're going to do a little drive down the western fringe of Djuma, and then we're going to head towards Cheetah Plains, where we're hoping to find something of interest. If nothing else, we'll have a great view down to the south, towards the valley of the Great Sand River. In the meantime, let us go across to Brent Leo Smith and find out what it is and where it is that he is going to be operating this afternoon.
So after an incredibly exciting sunrise safari, Liam and I are following up again on the Nkuhuma Pride, who incredibly, the first ever introduction of 3 tiny little cubs into the Pride, and we were there to witness it live. If you missed it, just have a look on our Facebook page. There's a little highlight reel of what happened this morning. But now they're not where we left them, which is not unexpected. It was quite cool for the morning. And the possibility they might have got a fright from the males coming in, the Birmingham boys. So I did see one track heading off in a sort of northwesterly direction, which probably makes sense, and they could be going to the Buffelshoek waterhole for a drink. So we're going to head now. We're quite close. Oh, hello. Or that's the other option that could have happened to the poor lions. They could have been scattered by the largest African animal, the elephant. So that's quite easily, they could have been chased by elephants, and that's why they had to move. Hello, little man. Young elephant bull. Well, did you go chase the lions, little man? It's looking like he might be alert. Not too alert, though. He's probably heading down towards the Buffelshoek waterhole. Doesn't look like he's had a drink yet today. He's smelling the ground quite carefully. Could be tracking a larger breeding herd. Hey, mister. So it's not uncommon to find these young bulls sort of around 20 by themselves. With all their hormones, they tend to cause a bit of havoc around the breeding herds. So they try to avoid them. Now, Cindy, welcome on the Sunset Safari, Cindy. Cindy said, we see lions and leopards mating. Why don't we ever see elephants? Well, Cindy, their estrus cycles are far more widely spaced out than the cats, and also obviously with that very long gestation period of 22 months. He's definitely smelling something, whether he's smelling for more elephants, which is what I think he's doing, rather than smelling for lions. So also, the female elephants are committed to their youngsters for a lot longer period than the lions, and also the main reason we don't see as much elephant mating is that the mortality rate of elephants is much, much lower than it is for the cats. So there's a lot more frequent mating because they lose babies more often. I'm going to let him ponder what he wants to do. I just want to get down to the water hole before he does, and if the lions are there, before he chases them. So if we don't... Oh, there's more elephants in through the thickets here. So there's a strong possibility that those lions were chased by elephants, which means we've got a challenge. Vim, do you accept the challenge?
What's the challenge?
Of finding the Nkuhumas?
Yes.
Yes, Vim accepts. Yes, he was planning on doing it anyway. So there is a strong possibility that, as I said, those lions could have been chased by elephants or got a fright from the males coming in. So the males would have heard that interaction we had with the females and the cubs, and they might have been attracted by that sound. So we're going to have a quick look at the waterhole. If there's no sign of tracks on the waterhole, I'm going to go back to that last position where they were and try to figure out which way the tracks go. We're about 2 minutes from not even 2 minutes from approaching the Buffelshoek waterhole. Lots of sign of elephant activity all around. Hi, Haley. Haley's wondering if I think there's any particular reason that amber-eyed lioness was the first one to meet the cubs this morning. I think she was just happened to be the closest to where the lioness with the cubs was, and she was contact calling. So she was making a noise, making her presence known. I think that's probably the reason why, Haley. Now, fingers crossed, there will be now, if 8 cubs, so 14 lions, possibly 16 lions in one group if the Birminghams are with them, 2 Birminghams that were quite close by this morning. I think that will possibly be the biggest group of lions I've seen on Safari Live, if there are 16 lions all together. So fingers crossed. Are they lounging by the waterhole? I'm not unfortunately seeing any tracks to make me believe so. So this is where we found them this morning. Well, the amber-eyed lioness and the female with the cubs. I'm just checking carefully I don't see any sign of their tracks coming down this way. So we're going to head back towards where they last were and see if they're not lying up a little bit further in the river system in the shade because of being chased by elephants, or maybe something else. A buffalo or a kudu bumbled into them and they went off on the hunt. We're going to make our way there, and while we do that, let's see what the highly entertaining James Henry is up to.
I'm deeply injured, everybody, you can see. I've had to use the old term RICE, first aid training. We've just done it. Rest, ice, compress, elevate. I've just managed to elevate. We don't have any ice with us, everyone. I can't push too much pressure on it because it's too painful. That I did while climbing that tree, everyone. These are the sacrifices that Wild Earth makes to bring you the pictures that we do. You can see a very severe injury indeed. Brian, what do you think the prospects of my survival are?
We might have to amputate.
We might have to amputate. Do you think that Amputation Live would be a good TV show?
Yes.
Right. Maybe you and I will be the first to do Amputation Live. Especially as there's not much leg to cut off. Okay. Exactly. We can probably do it with a pair of wire cutters. Okay. We're going to go past Treehouse Dam now. See if Karula is there, and then we're going to head to Cheetah Plains. But before we do that, everybody, in front of us, the most common and yet one of the most elegant antelope here at Djuma. Firstly, we shall frame them underneath the marula tree so that you might get a sense of the vista. Isn't that nice, Brian?
That's amazing.
Look how framed they are between the two pillars that are those marula trees. One thinks of heaven's gates when one sees the sky through those two pillars, doesn't one, Brian? And there indeed into the heavens stretches the great low-felt atmosphere. Okay, enough of that stupidity. Let's keep going. We'll just get a little bit closer to them, see what they're doing. It's all too tempting sometimes just to go past these things and not observe them, because I think the impala would probably teach us as much about themselves as the leopards would do. The pillars. So we've got a mixed herd of males. I say mixed because they're of mixed ages, and I'll explain how I know that now. Assuming they don't all run off at a great speed. Now, you can see the one there with the horns that are not bent twice, they're only bent once. That's one there, yep, and you can tell when they're born or how old they are quite easily because they're all born in November, you see. So that chap is coming up now onto his first birthday. Is that correct? No, I imagine he's actually coming up on his second birthday. It'll be his second birthday this year. See that? The others at least 2.5 or, more than 3 years old. So they'll be coming up to their third or fourth or fifth birthdays. It's difficult to tell once they're past their second birthday. Brian, they don't seem to want to spend much time with us, so I think we shall continue. I think that they're probably quite afraid of the echinoderm that is affixed to your thumb. Yes, they should be. The suave echinoderm, terrifying creature. Let me see it again. Very nice. Yes. I was asking Brian, he said to me, do you want to see the thumb today? So I said, of course I want to see the thumb today. So then I said to him, what is it? Because normally I can tell what it is. I had the same trouble with the tumbleweed from 2 days ago, but here is a suave starfish, and I was forced to ask Brian how on earth he managed to think of drawing a suave starfish on his thumb in the middle of the Lowveld. He couldn't come up with an answer. Now, look over there, not for any other reason other than the fact that that milkberry tree sitting on the termite mound is one of Karula's favorite trees. She likes to go and sit there, but you can't see it during the summer. You can't see that tree from the road. It's totally invisible. And yet at this time of the year, it is perfectly visible. Do you see a leopard there, Brian?
No, not currently.
That's disappointing. Hello everybody at the Lansdowne Teachers Conference. You're most welcome. I believe you've joined us all the way from Virginia Beach, Virginia, if I'm not mistaken, and it's lovely to have you with us. I hope you enjoy the time that you have with us, and please do talk to us during the next little while that you're with us. Hashtag Safari Live if you want to ask us a question on Twitter, or questions@WildEarth.TV if you want to ask us on the email. Okay, we're looking for leopards, sort of, in this area. We're not sort of fixated on that outcome, but it would be nice to see Karula, a 12-year-old female leopard who's got 2 little cubs here, and they are now going to be, they were born on the 2nd of February, so you can work out how old they're going to be. They're going to be 7 months old fairly soon. Behold, Brian, the Lilac Beasted Roller. Now, there are 2 Lilac Beasted Rollers here. There is the one, and there is another fairly close by. And they are quite possibly a pair thinking about the springtime. Can you see the other one, Brian? And I suspect that they are looking in that dead tree because they like the holes in trees. That's where they nest. And they're indistinguishable, the male from the female. And it's one of the great mysteries, I think, of the bush out here. We've had various discussions with our viewers, fascinating discussions, over whether or not... Oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? We've had various discussions about why it is that the males and females should be so brightly coloured, none of which I have found particularly satisfactory. Denise, welcome. Thank you for your question. You say, how often does it rain here? Well, it's easier to say how much rain we get here. We normally get 600 millimeters or 2 feet of rain, 24 inches or so. That's in a good year. In a bad year, like last year, we had 200 millimeters, which is much less than that. That's a third of the rain that we should have got normally. And that means that the place is pretty dry at the moment. The rain normally starts at the end of November, or the good rains. We'll probably get a shower or 2 before then. That will just green up the grass, and the trees here are going to flush with their new leaves probably from sort of the early September. But that's the easiest way for me to sort of... Ooh, he flew straight towards us briefly. That's the easiest way for me to describe it to you, Denise. It's not possible for me to say how often it rains because it is so random. And you find that just about all over Africa, where the weather is almost... Well, it's unpredictable compared with areas, say, of a latitude that fits with the Mediterranean. So if you think of the Mediterranean Sea and you think of the countries on both sides of the Mediterranean, the climates there are pretty predictable. They rain pretty much the same time every year, much less of a gap between high and low, and so the average actually means something. Average rainfall here, really a pretty meaningless concept because it is so very variable. Hello Eric, lovely to hear from you again. Thank you very much. You say, how many leopards do we get in the area? Well, it depends what area you mean. In the Sabi Sands itself, that's the 60,000 hectares or so that we're operating on now, there is a record of at least 183 leopards knocking about the place. In this particular area where we are now, well, we see 2 females regularly, one in fact most of the time now, but 2 or 3 females regularly. That's Karula, Inkanyeni off at Cheetah Plains, and Shadow a little bit into Arathusa to the west of us, and then we see 1 or 2 others now and then we see the cubs of those ones. So Shadow's got 1, Karula's got 2, Inkanyeni's got 2, although we don't see them very often. It's Karula's ones that form the bulk of our viewing, and then 2 or 3 male leopards that are resident territorial males, and then 1 or 2 non-resident territorial males. So that's the kind of leopard distribution in this particular area. But the Sabi Sand, which forms 60,000 hectares, or if you multiply that by 2.2 and you get to roughly say 140,000 acres, or 2.4, so maybe 160,000 acres. That's the Sabi Sand, which forms part of the western fringes of the Kruger Park. 183 leopards into the Kruger, of course, because we are connected. There are no fences. 8.5 million acres of land. I don't even want to try and work out how many leopards there must be in that area. No one knows for sure. Hello, Colleen. We are hoping to see some of my favorite animals today. Those are wild dogs. That's the wolf of Africa, the painted wolf of Africa, I think my most favorite, mainly because they are so entertaining to watch hunt, to watch play, and of course because they have a very egalitarian society to which many humans aspire, of course. Now, my second favorite animal out here at the moment is what you're going to see with Brent Leo Smith right now.
Here we go. We are with some little lion cubs. Now, this is the Nkuhuma pride of cubs. There are 5 older ones, very similar in age, but from 2 different litters. And for the first time, the 3 smallest cub members were introduced to them on the sunrise safari. And there to the right, you can see the little one. A little bit to the left, Van. Is it? Oh, there it is. You can just see it moving through the bush. We're not getting too close because none of the females are here. So what's happened is they've left all the cubs together in a relatively inaccessible area, and they've gone off hunting. Something might have stumbled through to them, and they've gone off hunting and left all the cubs together. This is very normal behavior for lions, because cubs quite often ruin the hunt. So we've stopped quite far away from them, and we're just going to sit quietly. They quite often will come closer to us and they get curious, but what we're really hoping is that the females are going to return. Hey, little guys. So there are 8 cubs in total, although we can only see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think if we move a little bit, we might be able to see all 8. Oh no, they're gonna crawl out to the open, the smallest ones. No, they're having a little bonding session behind the bush. I'm gonna move the car ever so slightly. And remember, we're on a live African safari. Send your questions through to questions@WildEarthTV or use the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter. Isn't this just too exciting? I said we're going to keep a little bit of distance. Hi, Andrew. Andrew is from the Lansdowne Teachers Conference and is wondering what are some of the more rare animals we get to see on safari. Well, we have seen pangolin, which is a form of scaly anteater, serval, which is another type of wild cat. I'm just concentrating on driving. There we go. So it's very important when you're around animals, and specifically young animals, to drive very carefully and very considerately. We don't want them to have any negative connotations with the vehicles. So that's why I'm very measured and quiet when I move. Even though the car might sound loud, they are quite used to them. And we want to get them very used to them. There we go. There, the little ones at the back. Now, Caroline is wondering, do all 8 cubs belong to the same lioness? Not at all, Caroline. So we've got 3 different litters here. So the 5 older cubs are from 2 females. One female had 3 cubs, the other had 2. And then the 3 smallest, tiniest little ones, those are from a 3rd female. So there's 3 different litters. Now, lions generally produce between 2 and 4 cubs. They're the smallest ones, or 2 of them at least. There could be a third, they could be in a lion pile. Now, normally in the wild, 2 to 4 cubs per lioness, but in the wild, the largest recorded ever litter was 6 little lions, but in captivity there have been over 10 recorded, but that is very abnormal. Hi, Eric. Now, Eric would like to know, what is the chances, or how many of these cubs will survive? Well, with the little lion cubs, they have about a 60 to 70% mortality rate. So, more than likely, the majority of these cubs will not make it through to adulthood. And hyenas or leopards, but they are actually caused by other lions. Specifically, nomadic males or new pride males coming in. Here we go. We can see the age difference there. So the smallest ones are about 8 or 9 weeks old, and the bigger ones are about 16 weeks. Now, if the Nkuhuma pride, which is our dominant female pride, is lucky enough to raise the majority of these to adulthood, the pride will be looking very, very good, because as far as we know, we're not 100% sure yet, but there are only 2 or 3 young males, so the majority are females, and add to the 5 adult females already, that would put this pride at over 10 adult females, which is a really large pride for this part of the world. Now, of course, we're all hoping that they are successful in raising this lot of ruffians to adulthood, because it will be incredible to follow this pride as they become a much bigger pride and start taking down bigger prey. Hi, Sarah. Now, Sarah is wondering, what age do the lion cubs begin to eat meat? At about between 6 to 8 weeks, Sarah. So they're very, at a very early age, they're already on a meat diet, but obviously coupled with mother's milk. And they're weaned at around 6 months, and that's also when they lose their milk teeth and their adult teeth come through. But lions, being the only social cat, practice something that's quite incredible in the animal kingdom. It's called allo-suckling, which means, in this case, with 3 lionesses with cubs that are all still on milk, that all of those lionesses will happily suckle cubs that are not their own. So it is one of the benefits of being a social predator and having multiple lactating females at the same time. Now, there's some very interesting research that's being done at the moment to see if lion prides, or the females in the lion prides, coincide their estrus cycles to take advantage of allo-suckling. Now, of course, we've just mentioned that these little guys have about a 70% mortality rate, and Caroline is wondering, what are the predators of little lion cubs? As I said, 70% of the mortalities are due to other lions, but also hyena will play a role, leopard, in certain cases jackal, python have been known to eat little lion cubs as well, big snakes, even large birds of prey such as our martial eagle, which has got a wingspan of just under 9 feet, are capable of taking a little lion cub. And in extremely rare cases, a buffalo, if they smell a lion den or lion cub, will try stampede and step on the future harassers of them. Hey, little guys. Now, but we're having such a high mortality rate, they have a very short gestation period, only about 110 days. And if any of the cubs are lost, those females will almost immediately come back into estrus and start breeding to produce another litter. Well, we're going to sit quietly next to these little lions. Oh, let's just see what... Hello, cousin. Maybe the novelty of new cousins hasn't quite worn off yet. But while they go down to sleep for a little bit, we've got Stefan, who's out on bushwalk.
Good afternoon, and that's exactly right. My name is Steph, and I am on the bushwalk session of this particular afternoon. And good afternoon it is to all of you. We've got Xander on the camera again, and we are sitting in a drainage line quite close to camp. And I must say, it brings me such pleasure to see something here. It's something for my imagination to picture while I'm busy sitting in the sand and just realizing what's happened. Last night, big male leopard walked exactly where I'm sitting, and although this track is indistinct, leopards like this hold territories in the Sabi Sands that are relatively big. We're looking at anywhere between 3,000 and 5,000 hectare. A hectare is about 100 yards by 100 yards big, a square. 3,000 to 5,000 hectare big is quite a big area for these very elusive cats to roam in and to have their territories in. They're highly territorial like lions. Only one male leopard will be in this particular area, and he'll have to fight out all other rival males into areas around him. And this particular male is a full-grown male, and I know because of the size of this track. Here's the back of the track. And let me take a piece of grass I can show you. Here's the back of the track. 3 very distinct lobes. And here are the toes. That one's covered by some grass. There's one, and there's one, and there's one. If I take my fist and I put it into the track, it fits almost exactly the size of that track. That's how I know it's a big male leopard. They have a cord that's as long as my fist. A female will be about that size over there. Quite a lot smaller than a male. Let's see if we can walk with this leopard. If you come down to about my head level, that's the head level of this cat, and he would have been slinking up this draw, and you can see why he used this particular ravine. It's offering him some nice cover to hunt the fringes of this particular grassland, and what he'd be hunting for is bushbuck, nyala, baby kudu, and impala, steenbuck, or duiker. They all and do all live in this particular area, and this is what this male leopard would have done. He would have stepped here, he stepped again here, and let's see if we can follow it footstep for footstep to see where you would walk if you were a male leopard. So Chrissy, hello Chrissy, you've quite rightly surmised that we're in the middle of a drought. It is quite dry at the moment. It's the biggest drought in living memory. I have heard Brent say that it's the biggest drought since the early 90s somehow. He obviously knows a fact that I don't. I'm sure that he's found out some more information. He's a bit of a bookworm, old Brent, but absolutely, we're in a very, very dry time, drier than usual, except for one thing. October, September usually looks like this. We only know that it's dry because we've been living in such dry conditions for the last couple of months. But generally speaking, any time you come to Africa during these couple of months, this is what you're going to be seeing. It's quite a low rainfall area, this, Chrissy. We only receive around about 400 millimeters of rain in a year, and 400 millimeters of rain is about that much. Just 2 of my hands of rain a year. Whereas in most other places in the world, much more than this, or wetter places in the world, much more like this. All right, see if we can picture where this particular male leopard walked. We can absolutely see, here's one of his tracks. I'm going to put you down at his head level and see if we can get you through this draw. Have a look at that. Now you are going to have to walk above here onto the bank with Xander while I try and see if I can picture in my mind where this particular leopard walked. But he walked right here and here And I can confirm that with another track. You're just going to go up onto the bank quickly, and then you'll be able to see exactly what I'm talking about here. Right here, we've got another one of the tracks of this particular male leopard. And I can almost in my mind, how we track is we've got to put ourselves into the mind of these animals. And it's the only way that we get to find him. He walked here, and he stepped up on top of this bank. Then he walked here. You can see where his toes have crushed a little bit of the sand. And he's gone up onto this. Now it was dark when he walked here, but nevertheless, that is where he's gone. And that's where we are going to go and look for some more of his tracks. And while we do, and while we cross across this open area to see if we can find some more of his tracks, we're going to send you over to James, who's got an update for you.
That is a Natal Spurfowl, everybody, and it is so identified by its orange-pink legs. They're quite magnificent, aren't they, Brian? He looks like he's got a pair of stockings on, and a similarly coloured bottom mandible, i.e. bottom part of the beak. He's rather a splendid fellow. Now, all of these franklins, we get 5 species here: the Natal Spurfowl, or franklin, the Swainsons, the crested, the Shelleys, and the Coqui. All of them superficially very nondescript and not much to look at. But when you get up close like we are now, where if that thing would step out from behind its tussock, there we are, you can see amazing details, incredible colours, and I think they're just rather splendid birds. And they occur in a collective called a covey. So this is a covey, and unfortunately that is a hunting term, so if you're of the propensity where you like to blast these things out of the sky with a shotgun, not a propensity I understand myself, well, then you might call them a covey. Hello, Mary. A very common query about what we do out here. You say, have I ever been hurt by an animal out on safari? Mary, I have not ever been hurt by an animal on safari. There have been 1 or 2 times when I thought I might be, but no, I haven't ever been hurt. The worst hurt that I've had from an animal on safari was from a tick bite. They subjected my inner thigh once to a very severe mauling. It was very unpleasant, and I still have a very small scar to show for it. But Mary, otherwise you're pretty safe out here, you know, unless you behave in a manner that is not very sensible, you're safe. We know how the animals behave out here. We understand their behavior to a large extent, and so we watch their behavior very carefully. And in so doing, we reduce any potential conflict that there might be by keeping our distance when animals indicate that we are not comfortable with their presence. And so we stay in a position where the animals never feel cornered. And remember, an animal out here will only ever attack you if it feels so cornered that it has no other option but to attack in order to make you go away. So none of the animals out here are inherently dangerous. They're not inherently aggressive at all. And it's completely unlike a situation, for example, that you might have with a bear, say a grizzly bear or a polar bear. I think they're the same species, actually, which didn't evolve with human beings, and therefore they see us kind of more or less as fair game. All of the African animals out here don't see us as that in that way. They see us, with the notable exception of a crocodile, which is substantially older than the mammals out here. They don't see us as prey, they see us as a predator. And that's what makes this a lot safer than you might think it would be, because we can park next to lions. You've just been with Brent, who's sitting with lions. And we will see elephants, and we see all sorts of other animals like that, and they just don't see us as a threat. All right, teachers at Lansdowne, I hope you had a good, well, it was a very short safari. You must try and speak to the powers that be so that you might come on a longer safari with us next time. Have a good day. We're going to continue towards Cheetah Plains and see what we can find over there. For the rest of you, we're still with you. Let's carry on from our little covey of Natal Spurfowl. Now, just quite an interesting update coming in from Buffelshoek, which is the property to the north of us. Many of you will know that the old dog Mvula has been mating with Shuluva, and they have managed to kill one impala each, and they're eating separately at the moment in 2 different trees not too far from the boundary. So that's quite impressive, I think. Hungry work mating if you're a leopard. Normally the male will just steal his meal from the female if he can, on account of the fact that he's bigger than she is. Hold on, Brian. Well done.
Thank you.
Now, the last time Karula was seen, she was crossing this road here, going down to the south. But while Steph is out on bushwalk, let's go and get an update on some of the smaller things from him.
And you catch myself and Xander actually walking across this big open plain. This is quarantine clearings, and that big male leopard that we were showing you the tracks of came across here somewhere. Now, rather than follow footstep for footstep, which will waste an inappropriate amount of time and be very, very boring for you to watch, we've decided to try and skip ahead to a place where I think it's most likely that he'll come out. One of the things that is racing through my mind is he's probably, having walked from one ravine, he's going to want to walk to another ravine. And once again, I stand to be corrected from Brent. He is an absolute master at following these things. There's a ravine right here in front of us, and I think that there's a good chance that in that line of bush that you see in front of you there, that we on a game path are going to pick up the tracks of this male leopard. But while we're doing it, it gives us a nice, oops, falling over the stick, it gives us a nice opportunity to catch up about, in particular, this drought, which, as you can see, has had an absolutely devastating effect on the grass at our feet, to a point where I don't actually think there's much of anything. We had a little bit of rain, and that's given us a little bit of this grass, literally just these tufts that have come out. Some rain that came in with a cold front, I think now probably close to about 2 weeks ago. And this will burn off probably within the next week or two, or be eaten, one of the two. And then we normally get rain here around about, we get a little spatter around about the 1st to the 2nd of September, which for us is our spring day. And then we get our first big rains, and by big rains, we're talking about the first 20 mils or so, which is that much water. We get our first 20 millimeters or so, around about the 10th to the 15th of October. Local folklore definitely says that if it rains before the 10th of October, by a week we're going to have an incredibly wet year. If it rains a week after the 10th of October, so around about the 17th of October, then we're going to have a very dry year. There's so many trains of thought at the moment. We were talking this morning, Brent was talking this morning about the El Nino, or I think it was James, I think, the El Nino effect, or El La Nina, which is the opposite of what we've just had right now. We're expecting a fairly wet year. However, I think we'll put my prediction on rain around the 10th of October to the test, and we'll see whether it rains before or after the 10th of October. Absolutely. All right, let's carry on here and see. Let's see if we can find anything interesting in this fallen down leadwood. Now, leadwoods that fall down like this make homes for very many animals, and the reason for that is that the wood itself is almost impervious to termites. It's a very, very hard wood, very dense. You're looking at about just less than 1.5 tons per cubic meter, which is an incredibly dense wood. It's in actual fact the 3rd densest wood that we have here, and the heaviest tree that we get here is this leadwood. They have a sap on the inside of their bark, which insects from all over love to come to, and that is exactly what I'm looking for now, is a thing called a sap run. When one of these hard trees creaks in the wind or has been pushed over like an elephant has pushed over this one, the bark tears slightly and the sap leaks out, and insects come and feed on that particular sap. Not only insects, I mean almost everything from antelope all the way through to humans will actually eat this particular sap. It's quite nice, has a sweetish taste if you haven't already developed a sweet tooth for anything, and basically it's just like crystallized sweet. But I think while we stick our noses into this tree and try and discover something of interest for you, those little cubs are just too cute to keep you away from.
So we're still with the wonderful little Nkuhuma Cubs, and they are just too precious. So they're in a really good spot. The lionesses have chosen a wonderful place to leave them. So they are lying up on the edge of the drainage line. That's not uncommon, but just below them is a very deep little ravine that I think even most other predators would battle to get into. It's also covered by a massive fallen thorn tree. So a really good little hiding hole for the cubs. If they feel threatened or anything gives them a fright, they're going to immediately scuttle into that area. Now, what we're doing now, because the adult females are not here, and because of all the pandemonium from this morning, although it looks like those little ones have been completely accepted now, and so all the pandemonium from this morning, we are keeping this to a one vehicle sighting, so we're not going to be able to stay too long, and we're going to leave them. If the females were here, it would be a very different story, and we're probably going to zone this area quite early unless the lionesses arrive. We want to give these little Nkuhumas the best chance of making it to adulthood. I've got a good feeling about these cubs. I think they're going to break the normal 70% mortality rate, so fingers crossed, send them all goodwill. And remember, this is live if anyone is new, and you can send questions through to me by using the hashtag SafariLive on Twitter, or send me an email, questions@wildearth.tv. Isn't this absolutely splendid? So incredibly special to have a little delve into these amazing animals. Now, we've talked about how high the mortality rates are for little lions, and Richard in British Columbia is saying, how risky is it for a lioness to defend her cubs against nomadic male lions? It's very risky, Richard, and the Nkuhuma Pride suffered that last year when defending those two young females and junior from the now dominant Birmingham boys. Three adult Nkuhuma lionesses and one of the sub-adult females were killed in that defense. So it is very risky, and it all depends on the exact situation. Sometimes the lionesses will even sacrifice the cubs so they can survive. Other times they will try fight to the death. But with nomadic or dispersal males coming in, it is an incredible risk. Brenda's wondering, do any of these cubs have the amber eye gene? Not that I've noticed. None of them actually belong to Amber Eyes herself, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's not a recessive gene that's carried in all the Nkuhuma females. I think we're going to have to wait for them to get a bit older before we can say for sure, Brenda. Okay, well, the lion cubs have settled down, all snoozing peacefully. We're going to have to leave shortly. Now, Lynn has proposed a very interesting question. Is it possible, if the Nkuhuma cubs and the Styx cubs, specifically the males, reached maturity, could they form a coalition? It is possible, but incredibly unlikely. Now, the main reason for that being, there are 6 Styx young males. So 6 of them together, there's no reason for them to take on any outside help. As far as I can see, there's only 2 young males with Nkuhumas, so they might join up with another single nomad or another 2 single nomads. But for the Styx young males, it makes absolutely no sense to take on anyone else when there's already 6 of you who know each other intimately. And that, if they do survive through to adulthood, is the potential for another monster Sabi Sands male lion coalition. Okay, well, the cubs are all snoozing, so we're going to sneak out and let them sleep away. Hopefully, we'll hear if the mothers and aunties come back later. What we're going to try to do is actually go have a look for the adult lionesses now. There's no tracks heading towards Buffels Hook, so I think they might have gone down towards the southeast. So, fingers crossed, who knows? Maybe we'll find them on a kill. While we do that, let's go back to Steph, who's marching around on foot.
Now this is such a most interesting find. This here is a gall that I've just picked off of a Terminalia bush. And inside the gall was a tiny little hole. Inside the hole was a tiny little web. And inside the web was a tiny little wasp. Have a look there. Ooh. And I think what we're having a look at there is an immature gall wasp. Isn't that amazing? I've never actually seen one before. I don't know if it is or it isn't, to be honest with you. All I'm basing it on is the fact that this was inside that cocoon, silky cocoon. The cocoon was inside this gall, and the gall was inside or on top of a Terminalia that is very, very common for having galls. There's what it looked like basically. I have lost a little bit of the gall. But as you can quite clearly see, the wasp itself looks dead. And that's because I think it's been parasitized, or is in the process of being parasitized by one of these little wasp predators. Now, wasps, all a wasp's larvae is carnivorous. Wasps themselves are nectivores. They drink nectar, or they suck on fruit sap. But a wasp needs to feed its larvae, it needs to feed it live prey. And what some wasps do is they lay their eggs onto the bodies of other wasps. The larvae then hatches and crawls into the wasp's body and then eats the wasp out from the inside out. Can you believe it? Making use of the home of its food, basically its prey species really. And that way, one wasp stung the tree, creating the gall, created a perfect nesting place for its egg and its larvae. It was then in turn parasitized, and then from there the other wasp has either left or is in the process of leaving. I can't really see. I can't see that this wasp has any insides. It's all soft and hollow. But there you have it, an unknown. Inside here, inside there, and then I found it on this tree. This is an immature Terminalia. I'm going to put it back there so we don't waste anything. I love these little explorations that we do. And one of the perennial questions that comes out on this walk is what's happened to that clay pot? Well, for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, and this comes from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, I think is exactly what the Twitter handle is. That was in my ear there for a second. We on a walk a few months ago climbed on top of a termite mound escaping some buffalo, and we at our feet found a remnants of a clay pot. At the time I thought that the clay pot was a treasure pot, but in actual fact it could have been a burial pot from people that used to live here. Could have been as much as 800 years ago, although the estimates are slightly younger than that, to appease the ancestors. Pots like this would be ritually placed in a termite mound with an offering of beer to appease ancestors. That's one reason. Or it's a form of banking. It's an early form of a safety deposit box. A person would put into this pot some of their most prized valuables. It doesn't necessarily have to be gold and jewels and silver. It could have just been anything that was prized or treasured. Buried in the termite mound. The activity at the termite mound would have caused the termites to bury the pot, and only that person would know where that pot is. Now what could happen is that person passes away or moves away from the area and doesn't take their pot with, and rain and animals uncover these pots from time to time. And in all the years I've been in the bush, this is now my 18th year or 17th year, I've never managed to find one. I've just heard about these possum. We found one. Don't quite know what it is just yet. We're still waiting for the owner of this reserve and the elders of this particular property to walk together to that pot to tell us if it's a burial pot or if it's a treasure pot, and then we'll make a decision from there, which I'm hoping to share with everybody when we do. But on that note, and thank you very much for reminding me about just keeping everyone abreast of what's going on there, we're going to be going through to, I think, James, or it could be Brent. I'm not too sure. I didn't quite hear that while I was droning on at you about the pot. But anyway, see you in a bit.
We've come to an Impala sighting, which is our second Impala sighting of the day, and it's interesting because there was a male chasing a female here, and we can't... There, he's going again. He's just to the left there, Brian. He's starting to chase another... Well, there we go. Watch that. Now, this might strike the more knowledgeable of you as strange, given the fact that in May they're supposed to have all been impregnated, the rut should be finished, and that's that. Now, the little known fact, which I've told many of you, and so therefore to many of you it isn't little known at all, but widely known, is that in September there is a secondary mating season for those females who did not get pregnant in May. Now, what I think is going on here is that there are one or two ewes in this herd that are perhaps coming into estrus, and they are inspiring a great testosterone-fueled chasing match from this ram. Which is quite interesting. You may also hear the gentle flow of water. That seems to be coming from a burst pipe in the road. It's not a sort of drought sound you normally hear. Isn't that nice? Here we go. Let's see what he does here. He's chasing her now. And what he's doing is he's just trying to herd them into the group, make sure they're in the group. And I think the action of this chasing, this constant attention, eventually causes them to ovulate, or certainly helps in that process. I don't know how exactly, but it also helps them to pick a mate who is both virile and able to hold a territory. So he's got good genes. It's a good way for them to select a strong male. Yeah, he's chasing a few of them around. Now, they are brought... Let me just reverse back a little bit. They're brought into estrus by changing day length normally. And likewise, the male's testosterone levels are, as the day length changes towards May. I suspect there's an element of that happening here. But I also think that if one or two of these females are coming into estrus, then what's going to happen is that will inspire some kind of sort of testosterone fueled or testosterone augmentation, if you like, in the rams. So that's quite interesting. I've only seen them mate in September. I've never seen them mating during the main phase of the mating. That's in May. And that's because it normally happens at night. But this one, if we're very lucky, we'll see it in the middle of the day. It's an extremely, if you've ever watched leopards or lions mate, the effort that an impala makes is substantially less impressive. It takes about 2.5 seconds. That's interesting. Nina, you're in Spain, you were born in Croatia, and you're about to move to KwaZulu-Natal, which is in South Africa. Now, that sounds like a fascinating life, kid. You want to know, if you buy a piece of land on the borders of the Kruger National Park, will the fences automatically be dropped so that you might enjoy the animals of the Kruger Park? In principle, yes. The chances of you getting a piece of land on the side of the Kruger National Park that actually borders the fence are negligible to zero. And the reason for that is that all of the land bordering the Kruger Park now is tribal trust land. That means it's held in trust by the government for communities of people, indigenous people that live on the borders of the park. So none of it is actually privately owned. And so you can't buy land on the side of the Kruger Park. You can buy it in places like where Brent's dad lives, close to the Kruger Park. but it is slightly separated. So the game estates have got amazing animals in these places, but they're not actually connected to the Kruger. Your other option, of course, is to buy one of the lodges around here. That is going to cost you some long sheets, but it's possible, and then you will have animals on your bed, on your doorstep. But actually buying a piece of land on the Kruger, very difficult. There are places like in the south of the Kruger, there's a place called Marloth Park, and there are a couple of places like that which are sort of share block areas where you can't drive into the park, but there is no fence stopping animals coming into the area. It's a sort of very small hectare sized, sort of 2.5 acres each plots, and you can see the houses in and around there, but the animals can come in there if they want to come in there, and those are quite nice places to go, and they're quite close access to the parks. And then also there are places like Timbavati, which is sort of like the Sabi Sands, which are also share blocks where you get a little piece of land and you can come in as often as you like, but you can't really live there. You're not allowed to live there permanently, and the same goes for a place like Buffelshoek. So that's the sort of option. But to buy greenfields land on the western fringes of the Kruger, highly unlikely. In Mozambique you might be lucky. You can't buy land there, but you can certainly get a 99-year lease if you know who to talk to. Nina, that's a nice question. Let us know when you're here from KwaZulu-Natal. Let's go back across to Brent, find out what's going on with those lions. I'm going to check where these little lion cubs were yesterday on Cheetah Plains, and I'll tell you what happens afterwards.
So as I said, we've left those little Nkuhuma Cubs. I'm now looking for the adults, the 5 adult lioness. Now, very interesting, I had a chat to Quibus, who's from Buffelshoek, who was there after the end of the sunrise safari. And what happened, a big troop of baboons came in, and the lionesses ran and chased them, and the baboon barking sent all those little lion cubs scuttling into that little ravine I was talking about. So he was very relieved to hear that all were present and accounted for. So the lionesses might have chased those baboons quite far because of the cubs. I've seen the baboon tracks going off there, but they're walking, they're not running. So we're going to do another big loop back down towards the north. Just make sure there are no tracks around Cheetah Cutline. There were lots of zebra in this area this morning, and VM and I did see a Bateleur take off out of a block, and at the time we thought maybe the lions have made a kill, but we weren't sure, and we wanted to go around and check the water. So we might go back to that area and have another look there. But it is turning into an absolutely beautiful winter's evening, and as you can see, there's some cloud around, but the sun is beating it out as we currently speak. Chitra in India is wondering, will the cubs run away from each other? Sometimes they do, especially if there's a big pandemonium, but they will just basically run to the closest, darkest, safest place. And quite often that they all run together, but sometimes they will get separated and run to different places. So we're looking carefully now. Now this is an area where there were lots of zebra this morning. Now of course the 2 Birmingham boys were not far into Torchwood here, and they were heading generally to the west onto Djuma, so maybe we'll find big male lion tracks coming across as well, especially if they manage to catch something. Now so far all I can see is zebra tracks, so we're going to keep moving. But of course, one must remember, it's not all about the lions and the leopards and the elephants. Of course, they are so wonderful, but we are surrounded by amazing and interesting things everywhere. So we can do it as a test. We'll do a test a little bit later, but first, speaking about some of the smaller, more interesting stuff, let's see what Steph's found on Bushwalk.
Yes, we found this apple leaf tree. It's a youngish tree that has been knocked over by elephants. You can see it was pretty much just snapped at this sort of head height that I'm at the moment. I know it's an apple leaf tree because the leaves, shaped like this, give the most pleasant crunchy noise. Now I'm going to see if I can hold it up to my microphone. Listen carefully, listen. There we go. Sounds like a crunching apple. Apple leaf tree. But not only that, I'm going to try and see if I can show you something that I learned from the Bushmen in the Kalahari. Apple leaf trees make fantastic utensil trees. And right here is what they look for. They look for a piece of wood that's got this grain that goes around in a circle like this. Then what they do is they break off the piece that they want to use. Now, of course, this is going to prove, let me put down the sharp implement before I impale myself. So basically they peel the bark off like this. Let's see if I can get it right. And then, using a knife and a scraper, and always away from you folks, never cut anything towards yourself, as your dads and moms used to tell you. You now fashion with the grain of the wood. As you can see, it's coming off quite nicely. And let me see if I can get the shape here for you before you get taken away. This is the beginnings of, I'm just going to try and get it rounded there for you, a spoon. Now of course it's going to take me a bit of time to get the handle right and get the shape right, but you can see the spoon-esque shape. And apple leaf makes for a fantastic utensil wood because it doesn't splinter. Now it doesn't look like that from here, but in actual fact these splinters that you see, you can rub your hand across them. They don't splinter whatsoever. I mean, that's on my lip. I don't really have lips like a giraffe, but there you go. You can see that it's not splintering at all on a piece of wood that makes it look like a splinter. And basically what I'm going to carry on doing, I should be using a bigger knife for this, to be honest, but nevertheless, away from my handle, or away, sorry, excuse me, to the handle, but away from the utensil part. I'm just trying to get it as smooth as I can for you. Let's see if I can get this end piece done for you. Should be using a bigger knife than this puny little one that I've got here, but nevertheless, you can start to see the makings of a fine spoon coming out here. Now what I'll do is I'll just gently shape it, probably making it smaller from this end. But I think while I carry on with this, trying to get it as nice as I can for you in the time that I'm allowed, I'm going to send you over to James and we'll come back with the spoon once we're a little bit done.
Can't wait to find out what he's going to eat with that spoon. Ooh, I nearly ate that tree by mistake. I should let my heart rate go down a little bit there. Okay, good. Now, we're heading towards 3 in a row pan, where hopefully we will find something interesting. Maybe some elephants. It hasn't been a very hot day. I'm still keeping my eye to the sky to see if we can't spot the first Wahlberg's eagle. There isn't a Wahlberg's eagle there, but just watch this female Bateleur hanging beneath these beautiful grey and white fluffy clouds hanging on the southeasterly breeze. Isn't that amazing? Oh, wow. Brian, much easier than the red-breasted swallow I made you do today. Look at that. And look at the slight adjustments it's making all the time. Little changes, slight changes to stop it plummeting out of the sky. And all done, each feather at the end of the wings is alternating a position all the time. Oh, it's wonderful. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. I'm still wondering what Steph's going to eat with his spoon. Hello Jennifer in San Francisco. You're saying you're a little confused because we keep saying there aren't any fences into the Kruger Park and then we say that there are. Jennifer, please do not be confused. I apologize for making you confused. What I mean is there are no fences between the Kruger Park proper, the national park, and then this collection of private reserves here, which is called the Sabi Sand, and the collection of private reserves that is the Timbavati, and then there's some locally, provincially owned parks known as Letaba Ranch further north of us, and one called Makoya even further north of that. And there's also the Manyeleti. There is no fence between the national park and those parks. But on the far western boundary of this, of Makoya, of Letaba Ranch, of Sabi Sands, of Timbavati, there is a fence. And that separates this wildlife land, which is largely privately owned, from the community or villages that live on the western sides. So there is a far western fence, but there is no fence between the Kruger and us. So I hope that makes sense. I can try and draw it for you if you like. I'm not a very good artist, but if we might find a good sandy patch of land, I will draw it for you, and then your confusion will hopefully be less, although my drawing is so appalling that your confusion might in fact be worse. So that's the story there. There's such beautiful light here this afternoon, everyone, on account of these clouds that are diffusing the light. I think it's just too stunning for words. Now I'm following the same route that Eggsy and I followed last time. Ooh. No. Alright, Tiki, you're in Maryland. I'm going to have to start drawing some pictures, Brian. This looks like a good spot, don't you think? Right, I will draw you a picture, Tiki, of where the territories are and where they fit, and this will hopefully also help with our question about the borders. Okay, if Kirsten needs to link away to something very exciting, she will just do so, and you won't know about it until you're with that exciting thing. Okay, now, I apologize in advance, as I have many times before, because I am a terrible artist. The first thing we'll do is the Kruger. And the Kruger, you're going to pretend that north is this way. You can see this line, can you, Brian? Right, that is south, this is north. Okay, the Kruger Park looked something like this. There's a bit of a boot down the way, and that's what it looks like. Okay, super. That is the Kruger National Park, okay? We sit in a place called the Sabi Sands, which basically sits there like that, on the borders of the Kruger. The Manyeleti is there, the Timbavati is here, or the associated private nature reserves. There are a couple of other of these kind of things as you go up towards the north. Now, what was I going to say? There is no fence here on the western of the Kruger. You see where I'm drawing there, Brian? you're losing audio. Let me move it around. How's that? Good. Then there is a fence along this western boundary here. Okay? And all over here are villages. Here is a village. There's a hut in which people live. Okay? About 4 million people living on the borders of the park here. So that's how that works. Now, if I am to just change the scale slightly, and I'll draw Djuma, or the northern Sabi Sands, and then I'll explain the territories very quickly to you. Okay, so we're onto a new map, everybody. We've zoomed in. And Djuma, or the northern Sabi Sands, there's a Gari Gate. There's the Buffels Hook sort of cut line. There's Buffels Hook. Okay, like that. Djuma, or Bateleur, is this piece here. Torchwood is this piece here. It's actually a bit longer than that. Torchwood is that bit there. Okay. Arathusa is here. Simbambili is here, which you've heard about often. Arathusa is probably a bit longer than that. That's basically how it works. Okay? But what you need to know, oh, Cheetah Plains, of course. That's where we are now. That's Nkoro. There's Cheetah Plains. Okay, that's Cheetah Plains. So we operate here. Cheetah Plains, Djuma, and Arathusa. The Nkuhuma Pride's territory looks like this. So it goes all the way through Djuma, into Arathusa, into Simbambili, throughout most of Buffels Hook, and into Torchwood. So that's the Nkuhuma Pride. The Styx Pride does border on them. They sometimes come north into Djuma. They spend a lot of time on Cheetah Plains here, and they go into Mala Mala to the south here, and up into the bottom reaches of Arathusa. Nkuhuma, Styx.
Bravo, James. Bravo.
Thank you very much.
Splendid.
On we go.
Your best, yes.
Thank you. Did that make any sense from where you were sitting, Brian? Kind of. Okay. That's good.
It was a nice exercise.
Thank you. I just had an update that Rebecca had to leave the final control because of the scraping sound on the sand. I have to have a very strong word with her when I get home. Okay. Brent apparently has got something to show you. Let's go across to him. We'll head to the waterhole.
A beautiful big Waterbuck bull. Quite close to the Buffels Hook waterhole. And we just noticed the movement as we were crossing along the eastern side. We're still searching for the Nkuhuma lionesses, but of course the wonderful thing about being in the bush is that there's so many different creatures that can divert your attention. So I just need to talk on the game drive. Copy, no problem, enjoy. Look at that. Now a big waterbuck bull, and it's quite an important animal. Oh, let me just go forward a bit. If you live in the part of the world we do, and for the main reason is that waterbuck, a male waterbuck, is the emblem of the Sabi Sands Game Reserve. There you go. Now, waterbuck are quite often found around waterholes and river systems, but not necessarily always so. You can find them all through the bush, and the reason they got the name waterbuck was around the larger sort of famous game viewing areas of Africa where there are large rivers like the Zambezi, the Okavango, the Luangwa, the Linyanti, the Chobe. When pursued by lions, they tend to seek refuge in water. Now, they are part of the Cobus family, or Cob family, and a lot of the Cobus family are indeed aquatic antelopes, such as lechwe and puku. I'm going to let that beautiful big boy carry on munching as he moves through the bush. And I'm going to show you something. It's quite amazing. We often take it for granted. So let's just go have a closer look at the Buffels Hook waterhole. And it obviously has had a bit of remodeling, but it is one of those, for me personally, one of the most beautiful things. It's also quite a harsh thing, but I spent from about 11, 12 years old growing up in northern Botswana, where dryness is just part and part of nature. And if we look carefully at the cracks that are formed as the water holes dry up, and for me it always reminds me of one of my favorite places in Africa, which is the Mkhadi salt pan, which is a salt pan the size of Switzerland. Oh, there we go. Now, I've spotted something very interesting which makes a lot of sense. This morning, those blacksmith lapwings, when we were with the lions on the other side of the dam, were very upset, and they were constantly tinking at us. Now, I've just noticed why, and I couldn't see this morning because I think I was too focused on the lions, but look at this little lapwing, the one that's out in the mud there. Now, look underneath. There's a baby, a tiny, tiny little baby lapwing that she's shielding at the moment under her breast. Now, isn't that absolutely incredible? Now, so that little baby lapwing, when the adults were running around, making lots of noise, trying to attract the lion's attention, trying to attract our attention, we didn't even notice that baby. That baby would have been lying completely still, somewhere very close to where those adults were. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been so upset. Just try to reverse a little bit, see if we can get a view underneath her, or him. So both parents take quite an active role in raising the youngster. Oh, it's really nicely tucked up in there now. Let's have a look. I just saw that little lapwing actually scurry under the adult. Come on, be proud, show us your baby. See, that call is very, very different from that incessant tinking we got on the sunrise safari. Now, can you believe that? We don't even know there's a baby there. And if she was to be disturbed, quite often that baby would instinctively just stay flat. So any potential predator would just think she was having a rest on the mud. Now, one of the biggest threats to those little lapwings, specifically this lapwing, because not many terrestrial predators are going to be able to get out onto that mud without sinking through. It'll be an avian predator. Fish eagles will take baby lapwings, any of the little goshawks or sparrowhawks, African hawk eagle. Okay, well, we'll leave the little blacksmith family, and that's so incredible. And if you look closely, there's so much to see out here. And speaking of some of the little things to see, James has got a very brightly coloured little thing to show you.
I have to say, I think this might be my second favourite bird, everybody. It is the Crested Barbet. And look at it. It's beautiful colours, ridiculously scruffy and surprised look. It's got a sort of surprised yet determined look about it, I find. And he's looking for some fruits to eat. That's what they like to eat with that big heavy bill of theirs. But they'll take anything they can get at this time of the year. And, I mean, again, just try and appreciate the coordination it took for that little thing to stand on one leg on a swaying thorny branch and scratch the back of its ear with that incredible dexterity and speed. Isn't he amazing? And I think the reason he's my second favourite bird is for much the same reason that the robin's my favourite bird here. You do get these things in town, and I've spoken about the fact that they used to fight over a piece of pawpaw that I'd put out for them when I lived in Johannesburg. There was a little touch of the wilderness there in the midst of the city. He's a fantastic fellow. I think what he's doing is possibly looking for insects. This time of the year, probably ants and termites quite a lot. And as I was saying this morning, and I'm not sure I got to complete it entirely, Brian was pointing out to me how many insects have got into the lights above our workshop, and you don't see a lot of, I mean, you really don't see a lot in the way of insects at this time of the year, but they're obviously around, and I think that's what this fellow's being forced to eat. He'd far rather have bananas and pawpaw, but this time of the year, not many of those around. Beautiful thing. They also nest in tree holes, just like those Lilac Beasted Rollers we saw a little bit earlier. And the tree he's sitting in, we don't often get a look like this, is called a black monkey thorn. And if you look at the thorns, you can just see they've got a black tip to them. Not a black monkey thorn. What am I talking about? They're called a... Oh, goodness gracious, I've lost it completely. It is black monkey thorn, yes, a black monkey thorn. I was getting confused between that. Stunning. And thank you for all of your screenshots. Apparently they're really impressive. We'll thank Brian for that. I think he's a remarkable fellow, and I'm astounded that he doesn't leave us. Now, I'm going to be a little bit naughty, everyone, and I'm going to see if I can make him call for you, because he's got such a lovely call. And I say a little bit naughty because we don't want to freak him out at all and make him think that his territory's full. So I'm just going to give a very short burst of his call. That'll do. See him looking up in deep confusion. I just want him to try and do it, because it's so funny when you see them calling. He's not fooled. This might be the greatest Crested Barbet sighting in history, Brian.
Yeah.
And the best thing about it, Brian, is that he hasn't voided his bowels like most of the birds do when we look at them.
Not yet.
Not yet, yes. I suppose it is early days. That was really tempting fate, wasn't it?
It was.
Every time he now flicks his tail, I think, oh, oh. There we go. And you can see the breeze blowing, sort of swinging the tree a little bit. But he's holding on just fine. And if you're wondering how it is that they're able to hold on like that, it's because Kim, you've asked a very difficult question. I will attempt to answer it by cheating and looking at my bird app. You want to know how many eggs they lay. Kim, I'm going to say 2, and then I'm going to read. Breeds in hole in excavated underside of dead stump. Yes, blah blah blah. We know that. Hang on a second. I've got to go down to the more detailed. Here we go. 2 to 5. Usually 3 to 4. Laid in 24-hour intervals. And they live. I'm not sure how long they live. You'll probably find they live about 10 years. They'll probably start breeding in their second year or so. So I suppose they would lay, well, I guess 8 times 4 eggs, which would be 32 eggs in a lifetime, plus minus. I'm sure there's an enormous variation there. And you know, I'm always amazed when I read these accounts. I'm always amazed by how short the incubation period is. This incubation period is only 17 days. That's just over 2 weeks it takes for the little hatchling to come out of its eggs. Isn't that amazing? And the other thing, sorry, I was just trying to tell you before I answered Kim's question. You see how he's sitting there. He looks very comfortable, of course, and he's swaying in the wind. There's no effort for him there. He's completely at rest. He's not holding on like you and I would have to hold on were we hanging from a tree that size, swinging in the wind. As he sits down, his claws or his feet immediately close because of a tendon between, well, if you imagine that a tendon between your thumb and your forefinger, something similar to that. There's a tendon there that immediately snaps those toes closed in a sort of vice-like grip, so he's completely at rest there. Otherwise it would be impossible. So he's not using any muscles to hold himself on that. Look at him looking at us. Joanne, you say you love the pretty red on the bum. Yep, I quite like it too. I particularly like the red around his face, actually. That's my favourite bit. And the first time I ever came across this special bird was when my brother's cat, Miss Brown, a recalcitrant Burmese, caught it and brought it into the house very proudly, at which point we all discovered exactly what a crested barbet looks like. And I seem to remember thinking, what a scruffy bird. Now this was at a stage of my life when I couldn't identify the difference between a grey-headed sparrow and a martial eagle, and yet it wasn't in fact the attentions of the cat that had made the bird scruffy. They are scruffy by default. The bird didn't make it, I'm afraid. I think it went down the loo. Sadly. It may have been buried. No, I think it was buried, actually. There may have even been a small epitaph written. Well, Brian, I think this is the first time we've ever been outweighted by a crested barbet.
Indeed.
This is before we link to Steph, who is still making his spoon. I just want to quickly tell you about something that's making me giggle. Kirsten, if Steph is desperate to tell you about his spoon, immediately let me know and I shall link him quickly. We had, as a family, we kept birds. Well, my brother kept a bird. He kept a budgie, and then we had some lovebirds, and we got some bad advice, and we put them all in the same aviary. And the budgies bred really successfully, except that the lovebirds didn't like them very much, and so they were quite vicious with the budgies, and we were disastrous at keeping these things, and they kept dying. Mainly because they were attacked by the lovebirds, and so first few times there were great tears, and we'd bury them and put up a little epitaph or some kind of wooden cross nailed together, and this went on for years until eventually my brother and I left home, and my sister was still at school, and so it came to her to look after the birds. I'm not sure why we still had birds at that stage, but we did. And apparently it's just recently surfaced in the family that my sister used to go into the aviary in the morning, and if she found a corpse, she would take it out, and instead of burying it and putting an epitaph, she'd just toss it over the neighbour's wall. And we were wondering what on earth the neighbours must have thought when they kept finding bird corpses on their side of the fence. All right. I'm not sure if you found that funny. I still find it terribly amusing. Let's go across to Steph and find out about his spoon. That thing is still there.
Alright, now, I actually have been quite busy with my spoon. I must be honest with you, I haven't moved from this termite mound since we've plucked it. Now, for those of you who are just joining us, I salvaged a piece of wood from an elephant-damaged tree. And although this may not look like much, the spoon that it is taking shape. There you have it. Now, while I thought that it would be a stew ladle when I first started it, it's now turned into a teaspoon, as you can see with me busy with. And I've actually got an idea for the spoon. My son is an avid yogurt lover, and he eats probably about 3 or 4 little tubs of yogurt every single day. I'm going to give him this spoon as a present when I get back home on Friday, and this is going to be my gift to him for the spoon. It's even got a handy little hook that he can put on the side, so we can dry it or hook it on. There we go. Hold it. I'm still busy finishing it off. But that's my apple leaf spoon that I've got for my little boy. So there we go. Thank you, Mr. Bushman, for helping me there. You can ladle it into mouth. So I'm going to carry on walking now that I've got the basic shape that I've got going. I might round it off a little bit more there at the front. I'm still deciding on how much to take off. Give it a little bit more of a rounded shape. But in all, I think that is what this piece of wood has called to me to do. All right, and on we go. Let's carry on going here. I want to head for that jackalberry that you can see in the distance over there. And the reason for that is that it is looking quite spectacular. I'm almost expecting what do I say? I'm almost expecting there to be a nest in there of some sort. Let's carry on going. I've actually lost my swagger stick, which is a pity. So anyway, we'll have to whittle another one as we go along. I had a batten here. I was feeling quite out. Brent and James both have these enormous pieces of wood that they walk through the bush, swaying to and fro, and I had to get myself one. And I feel quite naked without it. I know what now while they have it. Watch out for these thorns here, Xander. They are quite vicious. Have a look at these thorns here. They, if you're not careful, can definitely take out an eye or two. While we thread our way through here on our way to that tree. Xander's wires keeping him. Wait, let me get in your hand. See, that's why I have a swagger stick. I can push these things out of the way. You're all free, all good, done. All right, this way. It's like a bit of a maze out here.